Hi, everyone. It's Joe Veneri, the host of Fitt Insider, the show where I talk with the entrepreneurs, executives, and investors who are redefining the business of fitness and wellness. Today, I'm joined by Scott Marcaccio. Scott is the co-founder and CEO of Myodetox. In today's episode, I talk with Scott about reinventing recovery and physical therapy, his disciplined approach to growth, and the keys to building a strong company culture. I had a great time chatting with Scott, and I hope you enjoy listening. Let's get into it. Hey, Scott, welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk and been looking forward to this conversation for a little while now. To kick things off, can you tell us about what you're building at Myodetox?
Yeah, of course. So I think as we define our bigger mission, it's really to change the narrative of how people think about taking care of their bodies and doing that through really redefining the physical therapy space. So when you think about the traditional therapy space and why people go to see a physical therapist or a massage therapist or a chiropractor, it's very much about being broken or having some sort of injury. And we're really trying to progress the narrative into a much more preventive wellness narrative to teach people that, alongside their boutique fitness and running routines, they need to be making regular therapy a part of the routine. So we've done that through upgrading the store concepts. We've really pushed the envelope on what the experience is when you come into one of our stores. And more so is our overall holistic approach, manual therapy and corrective exercise. So how our physical therapists treat, issues that walk in the door for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that last part, it really touching on what makes Myodetox so unique is a convergence of the physical therapy, the wellness kind of version of recovery, and also like building a lifestyle brand around those things. Can you kind of speak to each of those pillars and how you approach them?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think the first to understand is, through my own story, I had a bad sports injury, chronic back pain, and I went through searching, therapist after therapist, and became very acquainted with the confusion that comes if you're the average person trying to figure out who do I go to take care of my body. And I think that was the first problem that we set out to solve. So my business partner, Vin, he's a physical therapist that I was actually a patient of about 5 years ago when we launched the company. And I think he was very familiar with the traditional industry where it's generally people going to see a doctor or getting referral from a friend just to figure out who to see. And I think when we set out, the mission became, can we create a trusted brand that whether you go to a clinic in Toronto, Vancouver, LA, New York, you're going to have a consistent experience and you're going to see a therapist that's been trained in a curriculum that is right for you. And if we think about this recovery pillar that you just mentioned, a lot of the traditional therapy industry is reactive. It's much more about you had an injury, you're having to react and get it taken care of. And we're really trying to shift the narrative around preventive wellness and getting ahead of this in a much more kind of cohesive part of your wellness routine. And through that approach, I think what we've been able to do is move the purchase behavior of people that generally get therapy services much earlier. So the average age of somebody coming into our clinics is about 33 years old compared to the industry average of 51 years old. And we're really excited just to see that the overall millennial demographic is spending a lot more disposable income on their health and wellness. And just taking their health a lot more seriously than what we see in the older demographic. So it's those kind of confluence of factors that's put us in the position to kind of redefine what therapy means for people.
Yeah, definitely. I think from the evolving and kind of bringing physical therapy into a new era is pretty obvious when you start to look at even from the branding to the design and kind of architecture that goes into the Myodetox locations. But considering the rest of the boutique landscape, when you think about fitness and recovery, what you're doing at Myodetox is far and away, separating itself from the physical therapy angle. But how do you continue to differentiate yourself in this recovery landscape and also stay ahead and innovate?
Yeah, I think first off, I'll say we're big fans of everything happening in all things recovery and wellness. I think there's a lot of exciting things happening in, cryotherapy, sauna, stretch, and these are all great ancillary tools as somebody's toolbox for recovery. But the lane we're really trying to own is comprehensive long-term support. And I think when somebody is really trying to maintain their body for the long term and keep doing what they're doing, there's a level of kind of holistic programming and expert care that you would expect to want. To that end, we only hire licensed physical therapists, licensed chiropractors. So anytime you come into a Myodetox clinic, you're seeing a doctorate level healthcare practitioner. And I think that's been a huge differentiator, just really holding true to the quality of care that we're hoping to provide for ourselves and that we would want for ourselves.
Yeah, and with that, when you talk about that level of care that you're providing, and it sounds like skewing towards like the healthcare aspect of it, how are you conveying that to customers, that maybe in the customer acquisition process or marketing or even the word of mouth, that, this isn't just another studio that's providing some of these ancillary services. This is a much more comprehensive experience.
Yeah, I think it all comes back to brand, and it's really how we started. So my business partner, Vin, when I first met him, something that he was doing that was quite unique was putting out a lot of educational content on Instagram. When I met him, he had a few thousand followers, and fast forward to today, he's got around 600,000 and has really built one of the largest healthcare accounts out there through Instagram. And that's allowed us to really craft the brand positioning and the brand story over time in a very organic way that seems to have resonated. So it all starts with the brand and the customer experience. And it's as simple as when you walk into one of our clinics, a traditional therapy clinic is very sterile and calm and medical. Whereas for us, we've really shifted the architecture and created a space that feels energizing and more drives a little bit more community. You come on and Drake's bumping on the radio. So there's just a level of approach that I think we've taken where we can bridge the worlds of healthcare and professionalism with this ability to make it part of your routine. And something that I think was really interesting for us as we did research pretty early in the company is when you think of the traditional physical therapy model, customer research, we kind of summed up how customers think about that purchase as a grudge purchase. They didn't want to be there. They weren't excited to go. It was very transactional. They were just there to get the outcome of feeling better and call it fixing their knee so they could get back to doing what they loved. And for us, our overarching goal is, can we shift this to a point where people love coming in? They look forward to it. They really start to look at their therapist as a extended part of their health coaching team. And that's really what we've been able to accomplish and demonstrate.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And really elevating that customer experience, making it easy, making it somewhere that they want to be, I think really helps differentiate in the landscape. So that brand piece, you've certainly succeeded on, and it's exciting to see that come to life. Thinking about on the flip side of the customer experience, can you walk us through the business side at all, whether that's the unit economics or utilization or even the growth plan as you've been able to scale? What does that actually look like from an operational standpoint?
For sure. So I think the first thing to understand is we have a one-to-one service model, which, as we started getting, some of the right contacts in the industry, it was really interesting because I think a lot of people were pushing us to think about a one-to-many model. You look at a SoulCycle or an Orange Theory Fitness, and one of the reasons those businesses work so well and have great bottom line margins is you're able to leverage your one instructor against 30 to 40 paying customers. And for us, we really came back to our principles of we want to create an experience and a delivery of the product that we believed in. And at the end of the day, we believe in one-on-one care. So we've really had to mature the business model and find a sweet spot where the box economic profile worked really well, and we weren't sacrificing the product quality. As a kind of an industry comp, traditional physical therapy spaces, generally, if you're a therapist, you're going to be seeing 4 people per hour. So you usually spend 10 to 15 minutes per person and quickly hand them off to an assistant or put them on a machine. And for us, that was the model that we were trying to break. So we had to really merge, this one-to-many thinking, both in the traditional industry and in the boutique fitness space, and come up with a model that worked in the one-to-one service model. So to that, it just comes back to understanding the levers of pricing, labor cost, utilization, and something I think we've been able to do really well is drive a lot of volume out of our boxes. So on average, compared to the traditional PT boxes, we're seeing north of 2 times revenue kind of per square foot. And I think that gets us really excited. And just our ability to support rent in places like LA, New York, San Francisco, that you don't generally see ground floor retail clinic spaces. So I think it's always been this evolution of continuing to identify the levers, test, experiment. And I think we've now reached a model box. We've got 10 units operating. We'll be at 15 or 16 by the end of this year. And just feeling really confident about where we've been able to land, but it has taken some time.
Yeah, perfecting that model and now getting into, like you said, 15, 16 locations by the end of the year. Certainly pretty impressive when you consider the quality and the brand that you're also protecting as you grow. I mean, that's one of the things that, if, like you mentioned, folks are pushing you to kind of compromise the model and maybe go to a one to many or not focus as much on the brand or like the upscale angle of it. How has that been for you? Like, kind of sticking to your conviction versus listening to maybe it's an investor, an advisor kind of pushing you in that direction.
Yeah, I think all opinions are great. And, we seek those out. We love to hear perspectives on this business. And I think we're the first to admit, you don't know what you don't know. So we need to hear these opinions. But at the end of the day, if you think of building a business that's going to be here 10 years from now, 15 years, 20 years from now, the product quality needs to be 10 out of 10. And that's what we always come back to. If the product quality starts to slip, this business will implode at some stage down the road, whether that's 30 locations, 40 locations. And I think, one thing that we've been really firm on is holding to a corporate owned model and not pursuing franchising. We've just seen time and time again that, franchising, the quality slips quickly. And especially in a hands-on kind of service-based business, we're not, we say we're not flipping hamburgers here. And I think there's a level of trust and expectation that consumers have that whoever they're seeing has been adequately trained and kind of in line with our overall curriculum. So we've had to think long and hard, and I think have some hard internal discussions of, do we want to pursue growth at all costs, or is there a middle ground here where we can pursue growth while maintaining the product quality that we all, aspire to have, even at 50 to 100 units? And it's been a learning experience. And I think that's, there's always this creative tension with investors and advisors around like, are we maximizing the economics out of the box, pursuing this approach? I think we are leaving some on the table, but from a cultural standpoint, from a talent perspective, the fact that our therapists feel so happy and excited, not have to work with assistants, not to have to see 4 people per hour. These are all the things that I think over time build the strongest business.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about that, as you've been able to scale and focusing on growth and growing your way very intentionally, how have you approached capitalizing the business, raising money, bringing on those investors and advisors?
So we did it slowly, is my answer. And initially more out of just naivete. When Vin and I started the business, we had no plans to scale this. So, it was really supposed to be one location in Toronto, Canada. Vin was going to be doing his educational approach and his marketing out of there. And we'd have a small team. And when we started this, I had a full-time job in the telecommunications industry that I loved. I had no intentions of leaving. But as the brand started to snowball through the first year, we kind of looked at each other and said, this could be something. And in really mid 2015, we both jumped full in. So for the next, just over 3 years, we bootstrapped everything. So we maxed out line of credits, credit cards, didn't really pay ourselves for the first 3 years. And it was tough. It was definitely a dark road. And I think one of the most positive things that came from that is just a discipline of spending and in how we think about resource allocation. I think it's very easy in today's age where people come up with a business idea, and because capital is so flush right now, people can raise money early, and it creates some perverse habits to grow. And I think we're seeing that with what happened with WeWork on a big scale, but I think that carries all the way down the chain, is that people chase growth over profitability. And I think as a founder or a business owner, you essentially put yourself in a big position of weakness. And I think we also have to be really mindful that, we've been in this very frothy economy for the last decade that, the music will stop eventually. So we, when it came to making decisions to take on capital, it wasn't something that we did quickly or lightly. In about 3 years after we started the company in 2018, we brought on a couple $1 million from a group of angel investors that had great industry experience and had really been acting as informal advisors for us. And throughout the way, we've brought on a little bit more capital. One of the partners, I think, that's been incredible kind of thought partner and just sharing a lot of expertise in the space was Equinox Ventures. That when we looked at some of the brands that we aspired to be and look at what they've built with Equinox and SoulCycle and some of the other brands in their ecosystem, I think it got us really excited to learn from some of the best in the industry. And that's an example of, throughout the way, we've really just tried to collect great insights from some of the smartest people in the room. And where we sit today, we've never gone out and raised kind of a big growth equity round, although we'll look to do that sometime in mid 2021 as we feel like we've got the momentum behind us where we really want to deploy capital. But it's just been a thoughtful approach as much as we can through free cash flow and some use of debt here and there. It's been just learn and test and grow and try to continue to do this from a position of strength.
Yeah, I want to dig in a little bit there because some of the things that you touched on, one, bootstrapping the business, not paying yourself for a period of time, kind of going through that struggle of realizing what it's going to take to get this to a point of profitability, or at least have it in sight, and how that makes you disciplined as a founder to kind of appreciate the investment in capital when you do have it, and also to scrutinize how you're spending it. I think that oftentimes gets overlooked, especially as you mentioned now, given the kind of ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, look, I do a lot of my own angel investing too, and I just see far too many companies that are almost overcapitalized too early. And what happens is they end up buying their revenue versus earning it. And a great example is, when we grew up until about 4 months ago, we had yet to spend a single dollar of marketing. And, collectively, we've already done north of 350,000 therapy sessions before we started spending money on marketing. So organic growth and building community, these are all things that have to be earned and take time. And I think in the larger kind of direct to consumer space, we're seeing this left and right, especially the last few months, where companies that have been overcapitalized are growing too fast. They don't have kind of their acquisition playbook nailed out, other than some digital marketing, which is getting drastically more expensive over time because everyone's trying to run that playbook. So we're seeing, I think, over the next year to two is going to be this separation of like actual operators that understand how to earn their revenue and businesses that have just been propped up with capital, right? And I'm already seeing that from an anecdotal level, like week to week, with not necessarily public news, but just seeing brands in the broader health and wellness category, whether that's food and beverage companies or beauty companies or boutique fitness companies that I think have struggled to get an organic playbook figured out because they had it easy, right? And it's hard. I think Jason Fried, I'm not sure if you're a fan of any of his books.
Definitely,
he's one of the founders of Basecamp. But one of his latest books I love. He's got a quote in there that like, being profitable is a skill, right? It takes a certain skill set to be able to run a company profitable. And I think we see this in the news all the time of founders being like, oh, we could be profitable at XYZ. If we chose to be profitable, we could do that tomorrow. We just have to change these things. But the reality is no company ever does that, right? If you've built the habits of building a company through spending a ton of money, it's very, very hard to turn that corner and say, okay, we're now going to change this entire playbook to be profitable. And some companies, WeWork's an example, now have a gun to their head to do that. But companies that start with a ton of capital too early, I think the double-edged sword there is they ingrain these habits in their organization that they can never escape. And it creates a ton of, I think, psychological pressure on the founder or business owner, knowing that they've got this war chest that's burning. And as soon as they have to do a down round or they can't, bring on the capital that they need to continue those habits, it starts to create this cascade effect on culture and management team leaving. And, it's a really tough place. Like I've had some chats just in the last few weeks of people going through that. And, it's not something that I would ever like to experience because I think it's just tremendous stress and pressure that's unneeded at this stage of the company.
100%. And I think, the impact on culture and leadership alone, and those are two things I definitely want to touch on, it can be hugely detrimental. But before digging into that, one other thing that I wanted to circle back to was just kind of the who's who that you've been able to bring on formally, informally as investors. You mentioned Equinox Ventures, executives from companies like SoulCycle and Flywheel. How were you able to build that network, especially considering you mentioned initially this wasn't even supposed to be what it is now, but you went about very intentionally, deliberately bringing on people with this industry experience. What was that like? How did you do it?
So I think a lot of elbow grease. I grew up in a small town just outside of Toronto with pretty blue collar family and no real network to speak of. I had no formal business training. Like my background's in psychology. Really, my whole career was just in sales and marketing. So I felt like I was very much starting at square one. But what I think was a big win for Vin and I was just our persistence to keep showing up. And I'm sure you've experienced this too, being in Pittsburgh. Like the level of networking opportunities in your hometown pale in comparison to when you spend a week in LA or New York. And something that we started to do very early was intentionally get down to LA on a regular basis and just try to show up to every event. We went to Fitt Expos, we went to new studio openings to meet the owners, and just this very organic partnership opportunities where as you start to meet owners of brands and they start talking about you, they start to give you warm intros, and it's a process. It took, I think, 2 to 3 years for us to really build the network. But it just started to come. And as people buy into your story and there's a level of authenticity there, and they see that you're trying to build a generational company and not just trying to make a quick buck, in the next couple of years, they are willing to invest in relationships. And it's a two-way street. We've constantly tried to go over and above to take care of people. So the amount of times we've ended up in a hotel room so Vin can treat a lower back that was flared up, and we're there at midnight, doing a special house call. Like, there's just so many almost laughable stories that I have, especially in the first few years of the company, where we went over and above. One example is the first time I met Harvey from Equinox. I was actually in Toronto on a Sunday, and we were supposed to fly out Sunday night. Vin was already in New York, and we had a meeting with Harvey at 9 a.m. on the Monday morning. And for whatever reason, there was this freak ice storm, and the entire airport got frozen in. So every single flight got canceled. So I'm sitting there at Sunday at noon, and then 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. waiting for the airport to open back up, and realizing like, damn, this is my first chance to actually get to meet Harvey in person. For reference, he's the CEO and managing partner of Equinox Group. So by 2 p.m., I'm like, all right, guess I'm driving. So I jumped in my car and I drove 13 hours straight through this blizzard to get to New York, slept for a few hours, walked into Harvey's office at 9 a.m. And luckily he spent more than 30 minutes with us and we had an awesome meeting. And then I grabbed some breakfast with Vin and jumped in my car and drove another 10 hours back to Toronto. And I think there's just a level of kind of, we'll do whatever it takes with no excuses that we try to bring to this game, because we realize we're, especially being a Canadian company, we're almost starting a little bit behind the start line. We have to dig harder to build our network and build these relationships. So we really try to go out of our way to do so.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of and that story certainly demonstrates it, going above and beyond and not leaving anything to chance, being very intentional and deliberate as you have, both in terms of the investors and how you've approached growing the company. I think those things, probably lend themselves very effectively to both your leadership style and how you've gone about building culture at Myodetox. Can you talk a little bit about what that's been like, transitioning into that leadership role and scaling a team that's now has locations across the country and Canada? So what has that been like? How have you approached it, and what do you focus on as a leader?
So I just read a book over the last few weeks that I love. It's one of Ben Horowitz's new books called What You Do Is Who You Are. And it's been a really interesting experience. I think, our team is just north of 200 people now. And I had no experience leading a large team before. This was kind of a new adventure for me. And it's been infinitely satisfying. I think the most contentment I will ever get from this business is just watching my team level up. But it's really taught me that the first 5 or 10 hires in a company tend to set the culture forever, right? Humans are social animals, and we learn from reference experience and watching other people's behavior. And no matter what you codify your values are, or you sit down and talk about what's our master plan here, like it comes down to every new person in the organization is going to be looking at the existing members of the org to figure out how to behave, how to act, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And as a leader and a business owner, we have to be very quick to fan the flames of the things that we like and very quick to kind of cut the head off of things that we don't like. And when we think about our internal leadership philosophy, it's actually something that I learned from Scott Rosen, who's the CEO, and I think lead president now of Equinox. But this concept of servant leadership, when we think of our business, our therapists are the stars of the business, right? If they're not taken care of, this business collapses. So we actually look at our therapists more as our customers than our kind of end clients coming in the door, because we know if we take care of our therapists, both their mental health, their physical health, make sure that just broadly speaking, they're feeling really happy and this is a place that they want to show up to work every day. The client feedback is tremendous. Like our NPS scores are usually in the mid 90s, which is extremely high for this industry. And we think that the reason for that is because we've always gone over and above for our therapists to keep them happy. And when I think of managing a team the size we have now, most of our team members are in the millennial cohort. Another author that I'm a big fan of is Daniel Pink, and he wrote a book called Drive. This is on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And what you want to think about as a business owner is there's a certain point in which paying people more doesn't necessarily make them more motivated. So you have to come back to what drives intrinsic motivation. And the three factors come down to autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So do people feel like they can kind of set their course in the company and work their way up? Mastery is, do people feel like they're getting the technical skills and the development and kind of investment in them becoming the best version of themselves? And purpose, what are we all showing up here to do every single day? And for us, we have the greater mission of really shifting the healthcare landscape globally. We've been doing projects in Africa and Jamaica and some really cool kind of philanthropic things that really get our team excited. So coming back to kind of the core principles of servant leadership and tapping intrinsic motivation, those are kind of the two pillars of how we've been able to scale the culture.
Yeah, your psychology training certainly shines through as you're talking about those things, and it's obvious that you're passionate about it, which is really incredible. But how do you do that when your team is so distributed? You talk about having, going on 16 locations by the end of the year, 200 employees, you're bouncing around between places. How do you instill that in people, and then how do you keep it up?
So it's hard. I spend a lot of time traveling because there's just nothing to replace FaceTime. You can have all the Zoom calls or Google Hangouts in the world, but just spending time having a coffee with someone or sharing a meal with someone is critical. And then number two is realizing that I can't be everywhere at once and I need to rely on my team. So a lot of my efforts, like I carve out about 30% of my week just dedicated to leveling my team up, whether that's doing one-on-ones, putting at a certain scale, you need to put great management structure in place. Otherwise things start to fall apart quickly. You can have a flat organization up to about 15 to 20 people. And then after that, chaos emerges. So we've been very intentional with management structures throughout, whether that's our quarterly objectives and key results system, make sure every manager is having weekly one-on-ones and teaching. We have a lot of new managers in our organization, and being a manager is a skill. And we've really tried to codify how to become a great manager within the org. And there's many things that we can speak to on that, but I think it comes back to just culture and trust. And I think if you can get those first 5 to 10 people in the business, all aligned with what we're trying to do here, then when I'm not there, then our regional director can speak for me. And we've really tried to use more of a decentralized model where, if you think about one of our clinics, we have a clinic director and we kind of empower them to be the little CEO of that small business. And no matter how many units we have, at the end of the day, this is a hyper local business. So we really do our best. Even our headquarters, we actually are called the support hub. We don't call it HQ because we are here to kind of serve the store level leaders and managers. So it's kind of through all of these touch points of empowering the ground to make decisions, of trying to spend as much face time and just get into the clinics as we can, and then teaching great management skills all the way down the chain. think that's really been the formula for how we've tried to manage this. But we'll see. We've got a lot more growth ahead of us, and I think these systems will continually break and evolve, and we'll see where it gets to. But those have been the core principles.
Right. And thinking about, you mentioned their growth, and previously you said, approaching this as though you're building a multi-generation company. What is your vision for Myodetox? How big can this get? What does that growth strategy look like? And how do you plan to get there? I know that's a loaded question, lots of pieces, moving parts, but just kind of what does that vision look like for you?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is that we're in the fortunate situation of not having taken kind of real growth equity, to capital yet, or any sort of venture funding. So we don't have a gun to our back to grow at X rate per year. So I think we're going to move. I like the quote, "Move fast, methodically." We're going to go as fast as we can without hubris or getting over our skis. And I think my leadership style is quite instinctual. I have a really good sense for what's going to be overwhelming to the team and what's kind of within that stretch goal that's going to pull out their best. And I think we're going to be able to accelerate that. I look at this year, we're going to be opening about 6 to 7 new stores. On a roadmap next year will be 8 to 10. And I think there's going to just be this consistent improvement in ability to open stores. But beyond that, I think the larger vision here is, can we create the first truly national brand of consumer physical therapy? And we hate using the word physical therapy in general, but we need to anchor it in some space, and more broadly in this recovery and longevity space. There's no kind of trusted national brand, and I think over the next 5 years, we see a pathway to opening an additional 60 to 70 stores domestically across Canada and the US. And then we've identified some international partners in kind of key countries internationally that I think would get us really excited about our ability to just influence more of the mainstream culture. And again, as I mentioned in the intro, just change the way that people take care of their bodies. I think we've often overlooked that your body is really the only thing you truly own. And I think a lot of people, including myself, we've optimized work and quote unquote traditional success over health. And I think that narrative needs to change. And we are trying to do our best to lead by example that health is cool, right? I think the people chasing cars and houses and big bank accounts, that's very, 10 years ago, that was cool. But I think today health is becoming a status symbol. And I think, as we think about tapping into the broader culture, our mission is to teach people and kind of inspire them to take care of themselves by, showcasing some of our incredible clients that are in the, music industry, athletes, celebrities, people that are making their health a priority and have platforms in which we can share kind of this collaborative messaging.
Yeah, that opportunity that you mentioned, where to create the first truly national physical therapy, even if you don't want to think about it that way, that's how the opportunity presents. But when you think about that in relationship to not only that you want to make health cool, but now that people are willingly investing, whether that you've seen that through the kind of boutique fitness boom and now at home training and just the rise of sleep and, maybe non-alcoholic drinks and not drinking in terms of trying to keep and take care of yourself. All those trends emerging. Is there something that you look at as an indicator of, where Myodetox fits in? Or is it just you're going to continue to persist, build this brand and make health cool? Or do you also look and say these things, this trajectory, kind of tells us that we have a really big opportunity here?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the opportunity is enormous. I think what we're doing is inherently hard. We're trying to scale a service-based brick and mortar business. And I think the average, student coming out of business school right now and trying to think about how do you disrupt the physical therapy space, they're going to immediately default to digital health, right? Nobody's going to sit here and say, oh, the business I want to grow is brick and mortar service. But I actually truly believe that's where the opportunity is. Digital health has largely failed. If you look at compliance rates, the attrition rates, it's astronomical. And despite press releases with some of these companies raising good growth rounds, I've yet to see someone that's really shifting human behavior from a digital only product. And I think the opportunity for us becomes build the authority through the brick and mortar spaces, because at the end of the day, a hands-on healthcare professional can't be Pelotoned, right? I look at, we're friends with like Robin at Parsley Health, and I think they've done an incredible job on the medical side. And I do think doctor visits are one of those things that can be delivered digitally, but hands-on manual therapy and people really correcting their bodies, it's almost impossible to do by yourself, let alone like the average person that has no real understanding of their body. So I think we're in this really interesting little pocket of the industry that like can't be Pelotoned. It's extremely attractive to landlords. Like we've had national landlords that are chasing us because they see on the back end of this retail apocalypse happening, what survives in the future, it essentially becomes services and restaurants. And we've been able to demonstrate, about 90% of our revenue is actually driven through repeat visits. So it's a very sticky kind of year-over-year growing business. And I think that's the opportunity that gets us really excited that we can just grow this at our own lane. I think there's a lot of barriers that we've identified would stop somebody doing it. And in many ways, like we recognize we got lucky. Like Vin's Instagram blowing up at the right time, our ability to do brand partnerships really early with Nike, Lululemon, Red Bull, Equinox. These are all best-in-class brands that have given us a much larger platform to be able to share our message. And I just think we've also brought together this kind of X factor of our management team, that gets me so excited to wake up and work together with every day. So at the end of the day, we will grow the business as large and as fast as we can, but we're going to have a lot of fun along the way. I think, I feel extremely grateful just to be able to wake up right now with basically all my best friends and build a business that's actually shifting culture. And, it's a very unique experience. So we don't take it for granted.
Yeah, perfectly timed, and a lot of things converging to make this certainly an exciting time for you, and we're excited to follow along. I just want to say thank you for taking time to chat today. It was great getting to hear the story straight from you, and getting you out of here on this. Is there anywhere folks can connect or keep up with you or get in touch if they want to learn more about Myodetox?
For sure. Pretty active on both LinkedIn and Instagram. My handle is Scott Mark, Markk. And just our general channel, I think Instagram has become most of our home. So check out Myodetox there. If you're in Vancouver, Toronto, LA, and soon to be New York, I would love for you to come check in a session and experience yourself. Other than that, we're just working away over here.
Yeah, keep after it. Again, thanks for making time, and excited for everybody to take a listen to this episode.
Thanks so much, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's episode. For more from Fitt Insider, visit insider.fit.co and subscribe to our weekly newsletter for insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Then, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. See you next time.